Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Irv Homer Show, broadcast from the Irv Homer Show, and right here at irvhomer.com. We enjoy doing this program Monday, Wednesday through Friday. It is 6 o'clock Eastern Daylight Saving Time, and it is August the 11th, 08 on Monday. We have some information to bring to you, some questions to bring to you. This program, I think, is a little bit different than other programs, but then again, everybody in this business says you won't hear it on this program, but you hear on other programs. You've heard all of this stuff, but basically you hear the same thing on all the programs with the same point of view, either from the left or from the right, mostly from the right on syndicated radio. One of the things that I want to get into is the fact that this program is brought to you by RGH Computer Services. RGH Computer Services, their number is 215-322-8685. RGH Computer Services, 215-322-8685. And they put this thing together for me, and they will put it together for you. If you want to join the Irv Homer Network, please feel free to give them a call at 215-322-8685. A lot of events are going on, especially the Olympics. And I have to say, in all honesty, that Friday night's opening ceremony of the Olympics, the Summer Olympics in China, was absolutely the most magnificent production I think that I've ever seen. Of course, when you have a dictatorship and people will not worry about committee hearings or money or moving 1 million people out of the way, there's no question that you can do that type of production. I'm appalled at the fact that the president was there enjoying the hospitality of a country that is known in all world circles as being the murderer of folks in Darfur and supporters of the country of Iran with the crazy Ahmadinejad as the head of it. But there are those people that say diplomacy works, and there are those people that say that it doesn't work. Well, I think that Barack Obama couldn't have been more of a ambassador to China than President Bush and his family was. The fact that he criticized the Chinese for their outrageous behavior, or the fact that he criticized Russia, was for the American audience. You must remember the Chinese did not see that television interview that he conducted with a sports commentator. I repeat, what the president said was geared to us. They did not hear it. No one in China heard the criticism of China by the president. So don't think that the cowboy from Texas is such a tough guy because no one in China heard him. Now they may pick it up eventually on the net or after he leaves, but he wasn't heard throughout China. We must put things in proper perspective, ladies and gentlemen, or we're going to be victims of propaganda, as people behind the Iron Curtain were, people in China are, and people in the United States are. But I don't think that the Olympics is going to generate peace throughout the world. I think that the competition is bitter, even though there's a display of young people who are emotionally connected to their competition, but inside they are loyal to the countries that they represent. And so what you see, in my opinion, is a great spectacular, a great production by the Chinese, putting on this $40 billion extravaganza. But in the middle of it, Ambassador Putin of Russia left because Russia invaded a country that broke away from the Soviet Union and became an independent country. Then another country, Silesia, wanted to break away from Georgia, and Georgia then went into Silesia, Silesia being an ally of Russia, Georgia being an ally of the United States. Georgia wanted to join NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, of which we support. So we are in a hell of a predicament. And I can only tell you this, ladies and gentlemen, in all honesty, and it hurts me to say it, but we are a paper tiger in the Darfur murder and slaughter of thousands of people, and we are also a paper tiger when it comes to what is happening in Georgia with a massive Russian army that is going into that little country that wants its independence and wants to ally itself with us. What can we do about it? Now, there are ramifications because there are 2,500 Georgian troops in Iraq and Afghanistan who are supporting our cause there, and they are being airlifted out of that confrontation in Iraq and Afghanistan and being brought back to Georgia to fight the Russians. The Russians are not happy about that because and it is one big damn mess. In the meantime, our president is happy as a pig in slop, and Cheney, God knows where he is, and Condoleezza Rice, I don't know where she's at, but we are, in my opinion, and the world is in a delicate situation right now. If Russia blockades the free cold warm water port of Silesia and of Georgia, there could be a outright declaration of war. And if we have a treaty with Georgia, we're either going to get involved in a war with Russia, or Russia will make us back down. And this is a very delicate situation and a mess. You must remember that Russia only has one warm water port. If you take a look at the map, you will see that Russia has one warm water port. That's Murmansk. It is basically a landlocked country, and it needs the access to warm water ports. So you've got to study the history of that area. A very tenuous position exists. Whether the president can do anything about it, I doubt it. We can't do anything. We can't send troops in to support them. We're going to be criticized by Russia, which we already were, because we brought troops out, the 2,500 Georgian troops that were supporting us in Afghanistan and in Iraq. We brought them out by airlift. And if we send our fighters in to protect those commercial planes or those military planes, there could be an air war confrontation between the United States and with Russia. So while you're watching the Olympics and being fascinated by our gold medal winners, and congratulations to them, there is another side of what is going on today, and that is my position in doing this type of program. It is a very delicate position. The advantage of our position in Afghanistan and Iraq is that, yes, we are winning. And I'll tell you what we're winning. We're winning the fact now that Iraqis and Afghanistan people are being killed. The civilians are being killed. Our troops are not being killed anymore. To a degree. We lose one or two, maybe a week. But what the hell? One or two is not that big a deal. I'm being sarcastic, of course. But there are more civilians being killed now by terrorism and by al-Sadr and al-Qaeda and Taliban than Americans. So there is a plus side to this thing, and that is they're killing each other and not killing us as much, because we're now shoving them into the combat area. And if you want to call that a victory and the surge, fine, you call it whatever you want to. I'm merely pointing out that the Afghans, civilian population, and the Iraqi people are being killed. They're not getting the services they want because of the terrorism. So that is the opening statement of the program today. And I want to go into a little bit more, and that is that there has been a lot of complaints across the dials and in the local newspapers, and one, in fact, about the bonus gate in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, when the pay raise went through in the middle of the night, and the people spoke out during election time, and some 30 state representatives and political folks from Pennsylvania lost the election, including a judge who was really not a bad judge, but he took the raise and he went too. A lot of criticism of, wow, why wasn't it reported? Why wasn't it reported? How did they get away with it? And why wasn't there more known about it? And I can tell you why more is not known about it in the Philadelphia area, including Bucks, Montgomery, Chester, Delaware, and Philadelphia County. And I can attribute it to one thing after looking as to why it wasn't reported, or why wasn't it brought up in discussion and embellished and discussed on a daily basis. And you know what it is, ladies and gentlemen? It is the fact that there is the diminution. I like that word, diminution. Ain't that a neat word? The lack of local talk radio in this market. And I'm not criticizing the syndicated broadcasts, but syndicated radio is not concerned about the corruption in Harrisburg, or the pay raise that went through, or bonus gate, or the gambling problem in Pennsylvania. They're interested in getting John McCain elected president, and questioning John Edwards as to what his relationship was in a out-of-marriage relationship with his gal, who allegedly had a baby that may be his, it couldn't be, she's not going to accept the DNA. But local radio, and being part of local radio for some 30 years, if a situation arose in Harrisburg or Philadelphia or Trenton or Dover, our radio station, WWDB, myself and other colleagues of mine on that station, would take a particular issue and inform the public as to what is happening in the local political scene. If it was Philadelphia, the programs would go on for 2 or 3 days until the situation was resolved. If it was in Trenton, Harrisburg, those discussions went on for 2 or 3 days around the clock on the local radio station, doing talk radio, where we behind the microphone got information from our sources and informed the public on almost a daily basis and through the night, even overnights. We didn't carry the Looney Tunes with space objects and crazy ghost stories. We did investigative reporting on our own, and we were successful because very few of us ever got sued for misinformation. And we got to the bottom of gas rate hikes and so forth. There were times that Senator Fumo was the prime target of my radio program and other local radio programs. But the syndicated broadcasters that broadcast in Philadelphia at the prime time when people listen to talk radio were not discussing the Fumo 64 indictments, I believe it was. Was of no interest to the syndicated broadcast, no interest to Sean Hannity, no interest to Michael Medved, no interest to Bill, what's his name, in the morning on 990. So you never heard about it. And now I hear criticism, well, the public should be aware of it. Well, how's the public going to be aware of it if it's a little blurb in the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Philadelphia Daily News, when the investigation into the corruption in Harrisburg was around-the-clock discussion on a radio station that had local broadcasters who were interested in local politics, who were interested in local crime, who were interested in local prostitution and local drug busts and local police shootings and local police being shot. So what you hear from the syndicator is the overall picture of maybe crime in America or the influence of drugs, but you don't get that local feeling. They're not connected with we in the Delaware Valley area and in the areas in which this program is being heard through IrvHomer.com, as far as Arkansas, Seattle, Washington, Hawaii. Your local broadcasters there are not getting involved in it either because you have no local broadcasting. You may have a morning man that gives you traffic, weather, and temperature. You may have an evening man that gives you some type of stuff to promote himself, so in case he loses his job, he'll be able to get connected with a political job or a political appointment. But during the prime time of talk radio, there is no local venue in which you folks are being informed of what's going on in your community. None whatsoever. And that is one of the reasons that local politics gets away with what it gets away with. And as I say, newspapers are a dying entity. And if you're computer savvy, you'll read the paper on your computer. You'll read the headlines, you'll read the paper. So local newspapers are not being read to the degree they should. And if they do, has a little article on it, one-page article, investigative report, and that's it. Take, for example, the horrible conditions of the Department of Human Services in the city of Philadelphia. I know that I was involved in the Department of Youth and Family Services in New Jersey in a case that's known as DYFUS. I had the people on the air. I had the head of DYFUS on the air. I had the head of the Child Advocate on the air. On an entire 3 weeks, breaking the story and the incompetency of DYFUS from the victim side and also from DYFUS' side. You got the same problem here, and I was watching television on Sunday, and nobody addressed the core issue of what's wrong with DHS in Philadelphia, the Department of Human Services. They may have enough money, but they don't have enough people. And as I said on previous programs, I'll repeat it again. Who in their right mind for $35,000 a year is going to go into the communities in Philadelphia where these children are being molested and being abused? You need combat pay, ladies and gentlemen, to go into areas of Philadelphia. Yes, I will say it, they're predominantly black communities. If I were a white social worker, no way in hell am I going to go in there to try to go after somebody who may be a drug user, molesting their child, or starving their child. And then they say, well, it's the father and mother. Have you ever seen the statistics of who the father and mother of these? Most of them have mothers that they know, but very few of them who know their fathers are. 94% of the people today that are incarcerated are parents. Now, what kind of child is going to grow up with his parents, either one or the other or both, in jail? Grandmom's going to raise them? Well, grandmom has a medical problem. Grandmom has arthritis. Grandmom is old. Grandmom has a bad heart. Grandmom has high blood pressure. Grandma may have cancer. This is what the Department of Health and Human Services has to go in and try to rescue a child who may be abused. Now, what is the caseload of the average Department of Health Services? What is the caseload of each individual person? What's the caseload? 10 families, 8 families, 1 family, 3 families? I don't know. So unless we deal with the core issue of what's going on in these communities, we're going to read stories of the Kelly girl with cerebral palsy and the brutality that was administered her to a point where she died, and the outrage of the mayor and the outrage of everybody. It doesn't mean a damn thing, Mayor Nutter. Because there are areas in which the police are reluctant to go into, let alone a social worker. And I ask you in all honesty, and it might sound racist and I really don't care, there is no way that I was a social worker making $35,000 a year that I would go into Broad Susquehanna, Broad Columbia, North Philadelphia. No way in hell would I go in there to try to see whether or not a child is being properly taken care of and maintained. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're white, you wouldn't do it either. Responsible black employees will not go in there. They moved out of there because they didn't want to live in those conditions, and now we're hiring them to go back in again to clean up a mess that exists in that community that they fled from. Yes, there are many responsible black people who rose above the conditions that exist in North Philadelphia, South Philadelphia, and parts of Philadelphia, West Philadelphia, where there were 9 shootings over this weekend. You're going to go into that area as a social worker? You shouldn't have condemnation for these people. No, they're going to indict them. because they falsified the records. Certainly falsifying records is a felony. But why don't they get these people with their lawyers on a local radio station or a local television station and say, look, this is what we deal with on a daily basis, 5 days a week, going into these places that smell from urine, feces in the hall, crazy dogs that are barking and tear your leg apart, pit bulls, cockfighting. We can sit in the suburbs and sit in your ivory towers in Center City, Philadelphia, and sit in your law firms and postulate on radio and television how brilliant you are. But I've invited many of those white-collar liberals or conservatives to come into the areas that I'm familiar with. Never took me up on it. Ride with the police sometime and see what the police have to ride up to. And see what they have to break up. So this is a social problem. It's not a parental problem. It's a social problem of a community that is in tyranny against the establishment because of drugs, poverty, illegitimate births, parents in jail. But we're ready to criticize and condemn these people and fire them. Anybody want to take me up on it? We'll go take a ride down in those areas like at 9 o'clock at night. Want to? So ladies and gentlemen, we've got to look at the world as it really is. I would like to put a panel together on a television program called Street People. And street people would be the people who live in that area. Maybe a couple of drug addicts, put them on the air. Bring some homeless people and have a panel of homeless people. Let's talk to them. I don't want to hear some social scientist or some psychologist or somebody that lives in an ivory tower tell me about homeless people. I'd like to see 4 homeless people on a panel with my dear friend Monica Malpass. Or maybe Mark Howard. Or maybe Larry Kane. Or maybe Steve Highsmith. Not some psychologist who's going to tell me about homeless people. I wanted to meet homeless people. I went down into the neighborhood and I spoke to the drunks that I give a bottle of booze to on Art Street. I spoke to a woman, one of the basket ladies. I wanted to find out for myself. I didn't want to find out from somebody with a college degree from the University of Pennsylvania on social phenomena. Let's get to the gut and bring these people on television and bring them on radio. And talk to these people and see how many of them are on drugs. Even if they're on drugs, bring them into the studio. So you'll fumigate the studio afterwards. So what? They smell from urine? What do they smell from? This is the real world that we're fighting. Not this academic Victorian nonsense that's on radio and television today, discussing the problems of people that should be seen and heard on radio and television. We speak about we're our brother's keeper. Yeah, write a check. You ain't bringing that brother of yours that's a homeless person home. No way in hell are you going to bring him home. But you'll sit and condemn him because child died. Another kid got hit by a car. Another 4-year-old in Camden got shot. This is a social problem, and I'm going to tell you the truth. This is a black problem. This is a black problem of poverty, illegitimacy, irresponsibility, denigrating the human form to its lowest common denominator. And this is a tragedy. It's a tragedy in the black community that has an overpopulation in our prison system, an overpopulation of illegitimate children. Give it a fancy. I know there's no such thing as an illegitimate child, only an illegitimate parent. Nonsense. That child's got to carry that stigma through its entire life. What do you expect a kid 13, 14 to do? He don't know who his father is, and his mother's on drugs or in jail. You expect him to grow up to be a solid citizen? You can spend a gazillion dollars in the schools and the education system in America, but you're not going to help that kid one bit once that kid leaves that building. You can give him basketball courts, you can give him swimming pools, you can all the physical amenities and all. He has no moral or intellectual support in his environment. So he reduces himself to the common denominator and gets a gun. And while those of you who support war, I support war when it's necessary, we do the same thing. If we can't negotiate, we take guns and bombs and kill the people that we don't like. Why? Because they don't understand us. They don't like democracy. They don't like freedom. Well, I transpose that into the kid who's 15 and 16 carrying a gun and seeing somebody with an iPod. He's my enemy because he's got it and I don't. So I'm going to blow him away. It requires some real face-to-face confrontation with the issues. And so thanks to the civil rights movement in America, we have black mayors, we have black state secretaries of states, we have black this, we have black that, we have black... But we still have the biggest black population in prison in the world. More per capita than the entire population of the United States. And until you black people out there, you women who learn to keep your legs closed, and you men who should take some pride in yourself, marry the woman, raise your kids. If you can't stand it, get a divorce through the legal system, pay child support. I have nothing wrong with that. But when you black people are multiplying like rabbits and acting irresponsible, and you're using the drugs and you're doing everything else, you're not going to get any sympathy from me. You'll get my pity. You'll get all the pity I can offer you. And I think that a child that died should have been in an institution run by the state of Pennsylvania or the state of New Jersey or the state of Delaware, where the child will receive 3 meals a day, living in a clean bed, getting an education, and teaching the child one thing that these children lack, and that's pride. If a child has no pride for themselves, they're not going to have any pride for the community or the society they live in. I know as a Jew, I was raised, don't disgrace the name of Homer. I wasn't allowed to wear long pants. I wasn't allowed to wear dungarees. I still don't wear dungarees. I don't have a pair of dungarees. My mother drilled into my head, no dungarees, you look like a bum. Remember what the heck were they called? They had a knife in the shoe, and a pocket knife. You had a high shoes with a pocket. I wasn't allowed to wear them things, my God. And I've told you before the difference between guilt and sin. And since so many people brag about their religion, I'll brag about mine. My religion is built on guilt. Guilt. Not sin. Some sin. We have a day of atonement. We have one day to atone for our sins. And I knew that if I disgraced the family in any way, if I came home drunk, which I never did, if I got a speeding ticket, if I disgraced the Homer name in any way whatsoever, my father and mother would lay a guilt trip on me that was unbelievable. In fact, my mother could lay a guilt trip on me so bad I thought she had a travel agency for trips. Is there no guilt? Is there no disgrace when you disgrace the family name? What are you teaching your kids? You commit a sin, God's going to forgive you. Well, so far, God hasn't done a very good job on forgiving you because you've been repeating the sin over and over and over and over again. My father never gave God a chance. My father said, you did something wrong. You got me to worry about. Don't worry about God. He'll get you when you die. You worry about me right now. So there are thousands of black churches throughout the community. What's it mean? What's it mean? There are more per capita black clergymen than there are white per capita. And yet the black community in America, and now the Hispanic community in America. Don't tell me there are good Hispanic and black and good Jews. I heard that crap before. I'm not interested in it. I'm looking at the overall picture of what's incarcerated and the irresponsible birth of babies having babies. And so we will pick on the teachers for not educating the kids. We will pick on the social workers for not going into neighborhoods that you would need a military force to go in and invade. We will pick on the psychologists and the sociologists, and we'll pick on everybody, but we won't pick on the people that are causing the root cause, and that is the black community and the Hispanic community, even the Russian community now, who is getting involved in crime under what they call ethnic crime. So the next time the police commissioner is on radio, ask the police commissioner, ask the district attorney, how bad is ethnic crime in Philadelphia and the surrounding areas? See, you can't profile people today because it may be discriminatory. But the police department and law enforcement deals with ethnic crime, symbolic of certain ethnic groups. I know in my career, in the public light, both radio and television, when I read the newspapers or I see a criminal, I just pray that it's not a Jewish name. I pray. Yes, it's profiling. But if I say Greenberg, a Goldberg, a Schwartz, or someone guilty of committing a crime, I just pray it's not a Jew. It's an embarrassment to me when I see a Jew committing a crime. It's an embarrassment to me. No, I didn't commit any crimes. No, I've never been arrested. I've had run-ins with the law, of course. Never arrested. I remember once I was invited to be the guest speaker at a synagogue, and the program director said, Irv, what are you going to speak about? I said, that's what I'm going to speak about. How I feel when I get behind the microphone and have to mention Jews who committed crimes. And I swear by all that's holy, the program director said, and I'll paraphrase it, please, can you discuss something else? There are 4 members of our congregation under indictment at the present time. That did not make me happy. I didn't think it was funny. And when guilt overcomes sin in America, maybe we'll have less crime. When you're embarrassed to be a criminal and not carry it as a badge of honor, we may clean up our society. When we birth children and we accept the responsibility for those children, we'll eliminate crime. But it must be directed in the communities that are fostering this type of irresponsible behavior. I'll do everything I can. I've done everything I can to help black, white, Hispanic, you name it. If I saw a problem, it was someone, I didn't care what color they are, what religion they were. If it was wrong, it was wrong. I've helped cops in Philadelphia, according to the newspapers, bad cop, did this, did that. Found out that I didn't believe what was in the paper. I got in touch with those police, got 2 of them off the hook, 2 highway patrolmen many years ago. But if I find a bad cop, when I was on the air, I'd nail you. I didn't care what Rizzo said or anybody else. If I had the information, you were bad, you were bad. and you didn't belong in the police department. I'm one of the finest and the best. So that is my comments on the Department of Health and Human Services in Philadelphia and in New Jersey with diapers. Probably in Dover and Delaware, you probably got the same problem there. But let's look at why we have this problem of children being abused and children dying, and then blaming the social worker. Social worker didn't give birth to those children that are being molested. We cannot make excuses for children who are being violated. We cannot make excuses for priests or clergymen who have violated the bodies of young children. We cannot entertain cover-ups. We can no longer do it, ladies and gentlemen. Without special exceptions, under a statute of limitations on 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. If you molested a child, if you did it 50 years ago, you deserve to be castrated. There is absolutely no excuse that I know of. And I've studied sex theories and read books and did everything I can to inform myself. Unless you're a sick SOB, you deserve to pay the price for violating the innocence of a child. What greater innocence than that of a child? To destroy that child and then have cover-ups? Have excuses? Live in fear? We must face life as it really is, or we're not going to change a damn thing. Subject I would like to get into is a little research that I've done in the past month. And I think I'm qualified to speak on it after doing quite a bit of research. And that is this big hue and cry from the right. I suppose I will be labeled as a liberal. And I really don't care what label you put on me. I put no label on myself. You put a label on me if you want to. I don't care. But you will hear constantly, you know what's wrong with America today? If Obama gets in there, he believes in big government. You hear it. You hear it from the bloviators about big government. We're going to get rid of big government, big government, big government. And you've heard it for the last 7.5 years under the Bush administration. But let's talk about the real big government. And who is promoting this lack of big government? The very people on the right who are saying there's too much big government were the ones that were successful in eliminating big government from their lives. And it started in the research that I've done when the savings and loan scandal started, which involved both Democrats and Republicans. You may be too young to remember the savings and loan scandal when the United States, we the taxpayers, bailed out one of Bush's sons that you never hear about, Marvin Bush. Never heard about Marvin, did you? Well, Marvin Bush was a major stockholder in a savings and loan bank that failed, and we bailed dear Marvin Bush out with a $60 million buyout. And why did that savings and loan scandal happen? One of many banks. Because the advocates of eliminating big government eliminated big government that oversaw the savings and loans. So if you take a look, ladies and gentlemen, at those people who are screaming today, the bloviators, you know who they are. You enjoy listening to them because you're fascinated by them. You don't know what the hell they're saying, but you believe this garbage. Gotta have a big government. Big government's ruining us. Well, those people who wanted to get rid of big government got rid of big government. And so we're in a mortgage crisis right now because big government was eliminated from overseeing the mortgage industry. We got rid of big government because we had to get credit cards that can charge you 30% interest on your debt. Big government never bothered with the credit card companies until some poor soul went before the Senate and said, I can't pay my credit card bill, it's up to $60,000. No, big government got out of the way of Enron. Got out of the way of penny stocks. So the rich managed to win, ladies and gentlemen, in getting rid of big government so they could screw us. So what do we relate to? Where did the government infringe upon? Did the little guy get a smaller government? No. We had to get automobiles with mufflers on their catalytic converters to clean the air. Right? So big government said to the automobile industry, you will put catalytic converters on there. Automobile industry didn't lose any money. They had charges for them. The insurance companies didn't lose any money because we got to insure that catalytic converter. And one of the cars I have, the catalytic converter is $1,200 to replace. Fortunately, when mine went bad, it was under warranty. So big government didn't get out of the way of you and me when it wanted to put catalytic converters to clean up the environment, when it wanted to put seat belts in the car, and big government said we do that, and airbags in the car, and then have a 55 mile an hour speed limit on the highways. Now big government raises it to 65. So big government managed to get into our means of transportation. And then big government said, we'll give a franchise to SEPTA, we'll give a franchise to DART, we'll give a franchise to this one, and then we'll subsidize it, we'll pay for it with your tax money. So big government in transportation, ladies and gentlemen, managed to screw us, but they got out of the way of the big boys, didn't they? Then big government says, you're not allowed to smoke. I was a cigar smoker. I gave it up. Not because of my health, because I'm too dumb to. But I realized that my kids, my wife had to smell that stinking thing. I always had a convertible and smoked it with the top down. Always burned holes in my pants from the damn ashes from the cigar. And then I went to sell the car, and the car stunk from cigar smoke, and the people wanted the car, but they wouldn't buy it because the upholstery stunk from cigars. So I stopped smoking myself. But big government said, you will not smoke in a public building. You will not smoke in a radio studio while you're working. You will not smoke if you have a child in the car. You will not smoke in your own bar if you own a bar. So big government got into my life, in my cars, and in my smoking and my habits. And big government is now putting red lights at intersections to see who's going through the intersection. And what's amazing, ladies and gentlemen, no reporter, no newspaper, no local talk show host because there is no local talk show host. They all want to be syndicated, doing television on national issues. But wouldn't it be nice to find out, A, whether or not traffic has slowed down where those cameras are, or how much money did those cameras generate for the investment? I don't know what they cost to put on the Roosevelt Boulevard or other locations where the cameras are, but what kind of revenue did they bring in, and was it worth the cost of putting those cameras there? Local talk show host with any testicles could find that information out. Local talk show hosts would go after the Motorola company and have a representative from Motorola and the Philadelphia Police Department and the council persons who signed the contract for that thing as to why the police department's communication system doesn't work. There's no local talk show host to do that. They're all syndicated. So we're frustrated with a police radio system that don't work. Local radio with local type of programming that I was used to would have done at least 2 days on that, 3 days, 4 days, until the damn thing's resolved. So it's in the newspaper one day with commentary on it, newspaper, that's it, let's move on. The death of local radio was the opening up for political corruption in your local community. Was the death of the expose of local corruption in your community. The growth of crime areas directly related to talk radio. The lack of local talk radio. The lack of people behind the microphone with the support of their advertisers who want to clean up the crime and the degeneration of a quality of life in your community. So we depend on newspapers that are dying to give us information that we don't read. Did the government diminish the size of an evil addiction that is a hidden addiction, or did they promote it? They promoted gambling. It's going to give us jobs and revenue. And you people fell for that garbage. And Rendell should be a damn ashamed of himself. And any governor that approved casino gambling should be ashamed of themselves. Because for every dollar, with the exception of the non-gambling revenue, which is restaurants, clothing stores, jewelry stores, some of the retail outlets, and the casinos, every dollar that the casino makes is at the expense of someone losing the money, who gets nothing but bling, 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 bling. Oh, shucks, I lost. So big government never said gambling's an addiction, but what we're going to do, we're going to give it to you anyway. We're going to sanction your addiction. So big government works well for the rich, the powerful, and the people who have the financial acumen to shove it up our you-know-what. But big government has sure gotten in my life. Big government has sure gotten in the little guy's life. Big government has taken away my freedom to smoke, my freedom to buy a car without airbags, without seat belts, without a helmet if I ride a motorcycle. But big government never stopped the mortgage guys from screwing the people so they could lose their houses. or the credit card companies that charge outrageous interest, or the casinos that'll steal your money while you think you're winning, while you think you're being entertained. So when you hear these conservative bloviators talk about big government, ask them what big government did to stop some of the corruption on the Hill, or stop some of the companies from taking advantage of poor people with mortgages, or the stock market, or some of the other crap that's out there. Did big government ever stop some of the litigation that goes on today? There used to be a time, ladies and gentlemen, where a judge had the power to say, this is a frivolous case, I'm throwing it out of my court. And God knows there's many frivolous cases that go in there. But who writes the laws? The lawyers write the laws, because they're in the legislature. They write the laws so their buddies outside the legislature can then make a living with law firms that have 400 or 500 lawyers. For what? What do they do? So big government has been very good by not being in their way of the companies and the businesses and the things that will give us an opportunity to lose our money. Big government advocates sports, special privileges for multimillionaires to build playpens for guys that they pay $10, $15 million a year. Why is it necessary for big government to finance playpens for sports teams at your tax money and my tax money? Will you explain that to me? Is there no conscience to these team owners who pay $10, $15, $20 million a year to a guy going to get a ball, and then come to me as a taxpayer and say, I need $360 million to build a new stadium? Not only that, the dummies that pay the taxes, you and me, then go to the stadium and pay through the nose for a lousy hot dog and a soda and a beer after the guy borrowed your money to build the damn playpen in the first place, so he can pay the player the $10, $15, $20 million a year. Are you crazy? Sometimes I think so. So big government, ladies and gentlemen, whether it be state big government or federal big government, is very good to the rich and the powerful. Is very lousy in protecting you and me, the poor slob on the bottom of the economic ladder, by getting in our face every time we turn around. We have to have our cars emission tested. And that's another couple bucks to throw into the pot for taxes. We're short money for our highways and bridges. What happened to all that lucrative money from the emissions testing that we never had up until about 20 years ago? What happened to that money? Wasn't that supposed to go to the highway fund? Big government has a unique way in screwing poor people. But big government, whether it be state or federal, has no problem in getting out of the way of the rich and powerful. Big government gives the rich the right to defer their income, set up endowments that are tax-free, go offshore and open their businesses over there with tax treaties with that country that doesn't charge them a tax. So big government is very good to the rich and powerful that you don't know about, but I'm telling you about it. But big government, under the guise of protecting you and me, is not the big government that these bloviators on radio and television that are making $2, $3, $4, $5, $6 million a year. That's right. I had said on Inside Story when Ed Harvey died, he was a talk show host in Philadelphia, and I said, you mean to tell me, Ed, that you make that kind of money working 3 hours a day? He said, yep. I said, that's for me. So while I'm sitting behind the microphone in an air-conditioned studio, after I left an air-conditioned home, got in an air-conditioned car, worked in an air-conditioned studio, to tell you how hot it was outside. To the poor guy that was digging up a street on Market Street, listening to the Irv Homer show, working at 90-degree heat, I'm telling him how hot it was. I didn't know how hot it was. I was air-conditioned from the time I went to bed till the time I got up in the morning. The guy that's making $110 million a year, named Rush Limbaugh, is telling you how tough things are. Hannity's telling you how tough things are. Some of the local hosts that are making $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 a year, plus bonuses for sponsorship and ratings, are telling you how tough things are. Do you realize how the average guy in America is being able to be suckered by what they hear on radio and television? By the people that you love and admire. One of the things that has taken over America, in my opinion, is greed. Yes. Used to be you work hard, save your money, invest it, spend that which you can afford. Today, what is American television today? Jeopardy, where you're going to win $5 million. Wheel of Fortune. All over the dial, ladies and gentlemen, we are programmed to get something for nothing. Even the situation comedies that allegedly are supposed to be entertaining deals with greed and sex. No humor. So America has become the land of the hell with work. Let's party. Let's learn to play baseball. Let's learn to play football. Let's learn to swim. Let's learn to dive. Let's watch the Olympics and see the brilliance of those athletes. Did they ever have an Olympics to show a young child who has an IQ of 200 that can discover the cure for cancer? For some of the childhood diseases that are out there? The world has become a world of greed. If I can win the lottery. Oh, if I could only win the lottery. Oh, if I could only win to the casinos. Oh, if I could only get on Jeopardy. Oh, if I could only play Wheel of Fortune. Oh, if I could only get on the Oprah show and get a car like everybody got. Oh, if I could only get a free CD. If I could only get a free trip. For those of you who remember my program on WWDB, I was very reluctant to give anything away. My boss used to say, why? I said, I don't want to buy an audience. I don't want to buy an audience. We'll give you $1,000 if you listen and give me this. We're going to give you. Folks, don't fall victim to greed. I'm Irv Homer, broadcasting from irvhomer.com. My website is www.irvhomer.com. And my email is evilirv@irvhomer.com. And this brought to you by RGH Computer Services. Their number is 215-322-8685. 215-322-8685. This coming Wednesday, August the 13th, this Wednesday, we will have as our guest Bill Kearney. Bill, you've heard on radio being interviewed. You heard Bill Kearney on radio being hung up on. You've read about articles of him in the Bucks County Courier-Times and the Intelligencer. Bill Kearney, the author of a book called We're going to give you the side of gambling for 1 hour that you've never heard before. Stay tuned to future programs of the Irv Homer Show. Once again, you go to my website at www.irvhomer.com and pick up my archive. You can also send me an email at evilerv@irvhomer.com, or you can contact RGH Computer Services for all the finest services in computer repair and information at 215-322-8685. We'll see you Wednesday at 6, also in the archive with Bill Kearney. You're going to learn about gambling. See ya.